everyone.
Good afternoon.
All right, so LEPC, Local Emergency Planning Committee. I've been up here a couple of times, which is good. It's that time of the year. Well, first and foremost, spills around the county. I put a handout up in the back, the sign-in sheet. These are all the spills that were reported to DEP for the last quarter in the county. There are 42 reported spills in the county. The vast majority of them were above ground storage tanks. It's pretty interesting. A lot of these are in people's basements. Basements have a tendency to lead to sumps, which who knows where their sump's going to end up. I know the one in my neighborhood ends up at the little pond out at the end of the street, which is always great because I always know when somebody overfilled a fuel tank because Impro or Clean Harbors is always working on the little pond trying to catch the fuel. There were 3 truck accidents and 2 rollovers in the month or in the quarter. There was a fuel truck. Luckily, there was nothing lost out of the truck, and then there was a milk truck that lost 75 gallons out of its fuel source tank. What's important to this and to our local directors is that if these things happen, and yes, there are fuel, and a lot of these are really small, but we have a lot of really nasty stuff that runs up and down our highway, the main artery coming in and out of the state on 95, and it's coming up right through York County, right through your town. So be aware of that. There is going to be a little change to our LAPC meetings starting in February. We're going to go back to holding a separate local emergency planning committee meeting. The LAPC is primarily made up of all of the facilities that report extremely hazardous substances. All right, they're referred to as EHSs. So those are in the safety field, environmental and safety. That's my title. It's also extremely hazardous substance. And we want to, based on really what took place in Biddeford, I don't have a whole lot of information on Biddeford. We hope to get more information on the committee. It really solidified that we need to meet separately and discuss. One of the things that we used to do in the committee is we used to meet at individual facilities and walk the facilities. So you had a lot of safety, site safety personnel who were walking through somebody else's plant, and you could look around and see. One thing I do know in Biddeford on the fire, everybody saw on the news on the lithium fire, it wasn't a quantity high enough to warrant a tier 2 report. It's a small enough quantity, so if all the tier 2s are required to be submitted to your local fire department. So if your local fire chief or fire department is just relying on the tier 2 report to know what nasty is sitting in that facility, it doesn't work too well. Large quantities works perfectly. Small quantities, when I get the 60-pound lithium fire, was pretty nasty. Had to be pretty nasty. Also, under my opinion, there are a few inadequacies under the upper rule, under what has to be reported and what doesn't have to be reported. And I've had talk to the CERC about that. So it's really important that you get out to your facilities. If you have a facility in your area that reports, or you know they manufacture something and they may have something interesting in it, you need to get out there and look at it. I got a phone call from Art at 11:30. I was getting ready to walk out of my office. I had a doctor's appointment. Andrew, I know you have metal Class D fire extinguishers down there. Biddeford's in dire need of them. Can we have some? Now I had to full call and make sure I don't have. I wasn't doing an operation that was going to leave high and dry without a fire extinguisher. We were able to give up 3 out of our 4 fire extinguishers to the city of Biddeford if they needed them. So they would have never known, looking at my report, that I mill titanium or magnesium in my facility. I don't do enough of it to warrant a report, to warrant anybody knowing what I do. And half the things that I have aren't required by law to report. So please, fire departments, emergency directors, get out, knock on some doors. We can get you a list of all the reporting facilities. It's that time of the year, right, Dave?
It sure is.
Reports are due March 1st. I don't think York County finished their reporting
November.
November. That's all of our firefighters at risk. November. And you're always reporting a year in the rears. So I'm reporting what I had in my facility up to December 31st of last year. So if facilities aren't reporting until November, it's a whole other year of not knowing what's going on. So please, I know it's a separate item, get out there and check your facilities. You know, they're big, most of them are big. You kind of know if you see flow diagrams of trucks pulling in, that's a facility I want to go see. I'm going to continue attending this meeting. Myself or my co-chair will still attend this meeting. We'll still have an update. We'll tell you what we're up to. If you want to get in touch with facilities, if you want to have contact with the facilities in your area, please let me know. I'm going to encourage them to show up to the meetings as well. But we want to try to merge the local emergency directors, because last minute, I mean, Saco's in my facility, heck, they're right on the end of my driveway, which is phenomenal, which is a great thing to have. But I have the Saco Fire Department in my facility 2-3 times a year. A lot of new guys come through just to see what we've got. We have a huge plating line. I have 3 firing ranges, which is another interesting point. We don't report the ammunition I have in storage because it's not required by law. It doesn't make sense, but it's not required. So if I could just leave you with that, learn from what happened last week in Bedford. Get out, check your facilities, talk to them, know what you're up against, because small things can turn into huge issues. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
That on fire, did you, there were 16 patients decontaminated at Southern Healthcare from
Right.
last week, and it was a pretty big undertaking, and I actually want to follow up with you on that afterwards.
Okay.
It was, you know, it was a pretty big deal to do that, you know, the process.
Andrew, thank you. Next, we're gonna run through a quick, a video of the Gatlinburg fires that happened in Tennessee and some things that went wrong. So I'm gonna put the emergency management directors on the spot in a minute to talk about evacuation of areas, evacuation of the community, especially thinking about evacuation of nursing homes or special needs individuals. Have you done that planning? What is it? And then that leads you to the next part is shelters, and Elaine's got a quick pitch on a shelter situation as well too. So one leads to the other. I just want you to think about that. We're going to be working the next few months to try to get the reporting back on what your special needs facilities are and what their plan is, so we know what that specific plan is. So, go, Blaine.
All right, I want to give a disclaimer. This gentleman, his name is Michael Luciano. He was actually trying to get out from his house to where the fires were all around him. So the language does get a little dicey. So he does use some words that you may not like. Just kind of change them in your mind to something else. You know, funny or something. Okay, so it's very good. Sorry, yeah, we're used to it.
We just got stuck, we're turning around, there's power lines, and trees blocking the road, we cannot get out. Other people attempted to evacuate, started calling off the house. Never wrong. Excuse me. And now we're heading back towards where we live, which is inevitable. It's going to happen. Starting to happen. There's down my road. Oh shit. God. Look at that. Hit gas. I can't see, you can see. Everything is burning around every cabin, everything. Shit. Oh, fuck. Fuck! Hit gas! Hit gas! It's too hot in here. We're lunch. Why is it cat on fire? Fuck. I don't know about this. Just fucking go. Well, this is a tree. This started at Brent the wrong way. What? When I make it look well, it's okay, Red. They're not even trying to blow us out. No warning, nothing. Not one single warning on the news. And you're telling me nobody knew. Almost every cat in the Charlotte village is burning to the freaking ground. It's okay, babe. Come here. Come here. Your eyes are burning. Oh, God. Hit gas. Please, Lord, let us get off this man. Oh, shit. Go. Fuck, go through it. Go through it. Fuck. I cannot mistake. Here, hold on. Shit. Okay. Hold on. Keep her in there. Oh, right. Okay. How's that ditch, Lord? Not good. Try on the left side. These sticks are short. We're running starboard.
Did he escape?
I don't know.
Very close to it, we got the video. We got the video, but did the guy live? Did the dog live?
Lucky he had a big truck.
To run one more.
You know, little cargo.
There were no warnings that were sent out, and there were excuses from the emergency management department. They couldn't get messages out because of the towers. Cell service. But there could have been ways. So think in your own area. First of all, could this happen here? You have wildfires in Acton. So
I actually went down there. I had to go to Tennessee a few weeks ago, and I have a friend that lives in Gatlinburg. And we went down and they took me around and toured. The mountain that he's coming down, it's all just like S-curves. And it's basically 1.5 lanes wide. So, and the cliffs are, you're talking, 1,000 feet down, straight down cliffs like this. And I mean, it was scary riding that road when you could see and there was no fire. But the problem was, the biggest issue they had is they had a fire going in the national forest down there and they had a new head of the forestry department for the national forest down there. They had a fire in the park that some kids had set. And at the same time, they had a windstorm going that was probably equivalent to like California's Santa Ana's 60 to 70 mile an hour winds. That's what all the trees were down from. It wasn't from the fire. The trees were all down because of the windstorm. And So with that, it blew it up out of the national park so fast, and he never called for help. He never told anybody outside the national park, because he's, as he said, well, we thought we had it, we were gonna manage it, and they never called in any additional resources until it was already out of the park. And that's another reason why there were no warnings, is because they didn't relay it to anybody that there was a fire in the park. So the waiting to call the resources, the weather conditions, all of it, made the perfect storm, so to speak, and just it blew it up over the ridge and down into the valleys. Ironically, the downtown, all the streets around the downtown are burned, but the downtown, which was, of course, Gatlinburg is one of the biggest tourist contributors to the state of Tennessee, and they were able to save the downtown, but that was about it. And then there was no warning. There was one elderly couple that they escaped. They couldn't go down, so they started climbing up the hill, and they made it. But they said they just didn't know what to do, so they just kept walking. And one would fall, the other would help them, and they just kept walking. They made it up and over the hill and survived. Yeah. But,
Thank you very much.
You wanna show that
Yeah.
preparedness one I found? Short one?
You look
You
really
look
comfortable in your home, but if
but
you
if you
have
have to evacuate because of an emergency, do you know where the local shelters are?
Yeah, I've checked with the local preparedness office, and I know the emergency evacuation routes and safe havens. I've got a portable emergency kit in my car with important documents and my medication. I even have extra dog food for Buster here.
That's great. And you confirm the shelter allows pets?
For more information about evacuation planning, visit the Coast Guard's Family Readiness Program.
We're everywhere.
No? You want another one?
No, was that?
That was it.
That was it, okay, good. So I'll start with the local directors and just get your feedback from that. So, start with Alex.
I think generally speaking, we're, within the city of Sanford, we're reasonably well prepared for those kinds of events. The areas that I would be most concerned about are the areas that are away from the center of the city, where our response times are, of course, longer. The areas are more remote and more susceptible to the fire hazard, but I think in general, we're in pretty decent shape, at least for the city.
Yeah, in Kennybunk, we're still continuing to review our comprehensive plan and our emergency planning. We're working with some of the bigger players too, and getting in touch with Atria, Huntington, the 2 rehab facilities. And then we also have Farragut, which is an elderly housing development. So we're in touch with all those people, updating our information in the plan. We're also continuing to work on our sheltering and have a very good relationship with the animal shelter, and we are working with them to keep coordinating and providing veterinary, because I think in talking with some of the other people that it's going to be a huge issue for people that are afraid with their pets, and especially in emergency, it just makes it worse. They focus on their pets. So I think we're in decent shape in Kennybunk, but again, review, plan, prepare, that's what we do.
Good report. One of the things we're concerned about is Maine Emergency Management's now working on a hurricane evacuation plan, and they're specifically targeting transportation needs for the nursing homes or special needs homes. So we're going to look at that in depth. Dave is going to be sending out a list by town along with facilities and looking for feedback to make sure that you have a transportation plan, and then where are they going? So Bill,
I don't believe we've got any facilities like that
I
in
don't
our
think
small
we do.
town, but we do have an excellent with the auxiliary power ready to go. As we pointed out last year during our storm emergency plan, I still haven't found a home for that emu that was left alongside of us, so I don't know if you found anything for that yet. And the Arizona snowplow is now buried.
Oh, of course. You all see a picture of that one. Steve, Socko, oh boy.
So I'd say we're pretty well prepared, but as far as urban interface versus rural interface, you're talking a whole lot of different dynamics. And, you know, for a wildfire situation, I mean, we've got a couple of things here, and that's where we bring law enforcement into play to help us with the evacuation piece, because the suppression piece is very important, controlling the fire, especially when you've got a wildfire going. As far as preparedness with facilities, probably about 8 years ago, we established a dialogue with the local nursing homes, assisted living facilities, and we meet with them on a regular basis to be able to make sure that they're keeping up on their emergency plans, they know our evacuation routes, and that they've developed partnerships between each other, because frankly, we're not capable of handling a nursing home in our shelter. That's a special needs population itself. So we make sure that they have a relationship with another facility. We can provide transportation via EMS, calling a private ambulance services in through our mass casualty plan. And then it doesn't, you know, put all the responsibility on us. They have to be responsible themselves. Daycares, the same thing. They'll call us and they'll say, can you write our emergency plan for us? That's not our responsibility to do that. We'll review your plan and look for any areas of opportunity that you have to get you in the right place. And planning is so vital. I'll just give a snippet of an incident we had a couple of months ago. We had a natural gas leak. Northern Utilities is working throughout the whole city of Saco. They had a dig safe marking that had been removed. Water company didn't know about it, hit a line right next door to a big daycare. Not a daycare with 3 or 4 kids in it, 70 little ones, anywhere from, you know, a month old to, you know, 5 years old. So we had to evacuate that facility, and they did not have a place to go. So we commandeered the gymnasium at one of the schools. They couldn't go to the closest school because they had put up a fence dividing the properties unbeknownst to us, which was in their right to do. We ended up cutting the fence down to get the kids back over to the daycare. The weather was bad, you know, the kids weren't properly dressed. We dispatched a couple of school buses. By the time the buses got there, we had moved the kids through the rain. There was a lot of wet children. We strongly encourage people to be responsible for themselves as we teach the public to have self-preparedness. These facilities that are charging a lot of money have to have self-preparedness too.
And that's what law requires.
Yeah, and we're examining actually right now, taking it a step further, and that's to make it part of the planning process and our ordinance that they are required to do it. So.
Good, thanks. Chief, Buxton, I think you're the last one.
You talking more about the fire evacuation or just a general evacuation?
General evacuation, we used that because that was the most recent incident, and it reminds me to tell MEMA and FEMA that it isn't just a hurricane, it isn't just flooding, this can happen too.
Well, I mean, I think that, this spring is the 70th year anniversary of the 47 fires in the state of Maine.
Yep.
I think that we live in the interface area on the fire side, and that we have done in my community and listening to other communities have done very little. Out west, if you look at Colorado, you look at some of their fires, they actually have places in their community that they have said, we are not coming up your road if there's a wildfire here, period. We don't care if you're there or not. If you heed evacuation, we are not helping you whatsoever, because we live in the interface. I would say we have 3 facilities that we have, and they're protected if, you know, if we're talking about fires, they're protected and they follow the guidelines that are set up by Wildfire Interface to have brush cut back to a certain level so that we're not evacuating them. We are protecting in place, because I really feel that our support can go towards them in a way that maintains their typical day than it does to move them somewhere else. We're able to provide that to the 3 different facilities. We're in them twice a year, and we update our plans twice a year. But, I mean, you're right, it's not just a hurricane that we gotta worry about this stuff for. It's about a lot of other stuff. So.
Thank you. Blaine, Ray, we just got 2 more things. We're gonna do a presentation on Ray, which is replacement for the Code Red. And then I wanna go around to the partner organizations. I think there's just 3, 4 that you'd like to get some feedback from.
So, February 1st, Code Red will be no longer in New York County. We are replacing it with Rave Mobile Alert. They are a competitor of Code Red. Reason why we're changing, price, availability. They're closer to us. Code Red was down in Florida. This company is actually in Framingham, Mass, so they're closer. They've come a long way. We can do a lot more with them than what we could do with Code Red. Code Red, we had 5 users that could use Code Red. So we had 2 here, then we had 1 in Sanford, and we had 1 at Kittery, and we tried to get 1 over in Biddeford, but they never did sign up for it. So we can allow now with Rave Mobility, every town in New York County to have a user account. So if Saco wants to have access to Rave, we'll give you a password and a username, and you can go in and do your own thing. So that way you don't have to call the duty officer here or Sanford Dispatch or one of the other PSATs that will have it, but we will give it also to Sanford Saco Dispatch. So they'll have it with them. So we can have 29 towns on the system at no extra cost. Code Red also only had 175,000 minutes per year. So we went over the 175,000 minutes per year, we would charge 12 cents per minute after that 175,000. I think 175,000 minutes is a lot. Not when you're sending out a minute message. It goes pretty quick. So this system actually works out a lot better. We signed a 4-year deal with them. The price of Code Red was $37,500 per year. Rave is $21,250 per year for 4 years. So we paid it up front, so that way we now have it without any other cost for 4 years for York County and every other town in New York. So as you can see, it does the same thing as Code Red, but a little bit more. So we have email, we have landlines that have already been uploaded. Cell phones, people have to go in and register themselves again. We also have RSS feeds. We can put Twitter into it now, Facebook. So we can update, I know what you call it, faceplate. Facebook, Twitter, all those other accounts that people have. So that way we can get the message out quicker. And this is just something of what Rave has been doing for the past couple of years. So they're a lot up to date with most of the uploads and the downloads from all the other social media that Code Red doesn't actually offer. So I think it's a better system than what we currently have. So like I said, you know, we're going to be able to give this out to every town. I'm working with Rave right now to actually do a stakeholder meeting either next week or the week after, before February 1st. So that way they'll come in and do a presentation and actually show you the system working. So if you want to have an account in your city or town, come to that meeting when I send the email out, and then you can be part of the learning, what RAVE can do and how to do it. One good thing about RAVE is Code Red, you had to actually wait for them to call you and then do a webinar. RAVE, you can go onto their website and you can take your own training class at your own speed. It's almost like what FEMA offers for incident command training. So you can do it at your own pace, at your own home, on your own computer. And then once you complete it, you'll get a certificate that shows you, there's a test, so you can figure, you know how to do it. And then you get a certificate showing that you are proficient with it. So I think it's gonna actually make our system in York County a lot better. We're gonna be able to get everybody on board, and then we'll be able to get it out, the messages out quicker. That's kind of quick in a nutshell what RAVE is, but.
With Code Red, it was very difficult to get a message out. We wanted to get an alert out. I called Lane would, or Stanford Dispatch, they called Lane, and we ended up calling ECN to try to get them to help us get an alert out. So very slow, not user friendly. I can guarantee you this one's easy to use because even Art can use it. So that tells you. And the chief will have a follow-up conversation because I am responding because this does an awful lot of the same things, but I don't think it does everything. So we'll talk about those two systems.
You can actually use this system and do conference calling with as well. So everybody that's on board, you can bring them in, or you can just do a small group. You can do everybody in York County. So it's a great system with a lot of added features. It also brings in the Smart 911, the national database. So it actually really opens it up to a lot of communication that you can actually get out.
So we'll touch on our partner organizations next. That's our last. So Paul, we'll start with you. Updates from you.
Just one open invitation. If you give me your email, I'll send it out. But we have monthly meetings for the Coalition of Healthcare Partners in the discussion about long-term care. One important thing to understand is that as a region, we have a long-term care evacuation plan that includes the use of the EMA resource, which is the bed tracking software, our emergency notification system, very similar to this. So in which healthcare agencies are going to be able to find out within a few minutes where the available beds are for long-term care. So if you're working in your town and with a long-term care center, please plug them into this, to ask them to join the coalition. It's free, I'm not making a profit on this stuff. And get them to understand that we aren't doing individual facility evacuations anymore. We're doing it as a region because it's much more efficient, and we can get people to the types of beds that they should be seeing as opposed to just dumping them in a hospital. So that's one thing. And on that note, in June, later at the end of June, we're going to be doing a regional evacuation of long-term care facility. And associate that with several other events that are going to happen. So a full-scale exercise, I'll get you the dates on it when we finalize it. I'll probably know next week, but I'd like the participation of as many agencies as possible. I'm sure York County will be participating to some degree, so more on that later.
Thank you, Paul. Katie, the Portland report first.
Wrong county. The city's readiness initiative, not much to report out on since the last meeting here. As I mentioned, I'm hoping to have a job posted soon, so if you know somebody that's great with public health emergency preparedness planning, please direct them to the City of Portland's Human Resources website. And as you're thinking about long-term care facilities, we would be looking to potentially dispense medical countermeasures to them during an event such as an anthrax release, or if we need to do some vaccine dispensing campaigns. So just consider that as you're working with them.
Great, Keith, thank you. Sergeant Shapiro, State Police, what's going on up here?
Well, I don't think I have anything germane to this meeting, but if anybody has a question about the state police, I'd certainly entertain it.
How'd you like our shooter thing?
Yeah, that's great. As much as we can get, I think it's good. I think, I think it's a reality. I just read in the paper that the Catholic Diocese of Maine is putting on active shooter training for all their sites based on the Magowski, Mike Magowski's, their security guy was the Secret Service, based on what's been happening nationally with places of worship being attacked. And, you know, I mean, clearly, I'm sure that most of those institutions aren't thinking that way, you know, on how to protect themselves if somebody walks in during a service or even off hours, what are they gonna do? So I think any institution of any size ought to be thinking this way, ought to be planning this way, ought to be looking at their resources that they have, and at least having some mental game plan on how they're gonna react to a situation like that.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, I'm sitting here. Hello, everyone. Good to see you again, first of the year. The auxiliary has made some changes. We have a new district captain. This gentleman is Byron Moe. He's the new district captain north, so he has most of New Hampshire and all of Maine. And on this side, I have Captain Berube, who's from Sector Northern New England, which has 4 states that he's in charge of. And I think he has a few words to say.
I do, you want me? No? Okay. I'll step up real quick, and I promise I'll keep this 5 minutes or less. In fact, if you'd like the Coast Guard to come do a presentation, we'd be more than happy to do so. I think a lot of times people understand the reach of the Coast Guard and exactly what we do, all the things we do. We're a very small organization, but we are global, all across the world, doing various things in terms of port security and whether it's national defense or doing domestic icebreaking here. I am one of 38 sector commanders across the Coast Guard nationally. I have about 1,500 people for Sector Northern New England, and that covers the 4-state region of Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, and part of upstate New York. At that Lake Champlain area where I do exercise some of my authorities as captain of port and other joint response with the EPA for pollution, that kind of thing. I appreciate the opportunity to come here today because I'm a huge believer in partnerships, coordination, working with Paul and his folks as well on some fast rescue type stuff. Our principal efforts on the security front, because we do look at international terrorism, domestic terrorism, is something we call a regional coordinating mechanism. It's it's a DHS framework for coordinating with federal, state, and local agencies. So we have a RECOM group that meets out of South Portland once a quarter, at least, tactically once a month to try and share information to protect, keep the ports safe. More specific to our port communities at this time of year, I'll just mention a couple things we got going on. Is obviously you may not think about it today since it's so nice out, but we are starting to gear up for domestic icebreaking season. That means we have our 3 harbor tugs are out and about trying to make sure our waterways are open, clear of ice. The principal reason we focus on these is 1, to make sure we get those seasonal commodities that are necessary for survival in the state, primarily heating oil, some LPG. We also keep those waterways open for search and rescue response for our folks, and as well as other commodities coming into principally Portland and Searsport. We have a lot of bulk cargo coming in, like rock salt for the roads, that kind of thing. And if these waterways, these maritime transportation arteries get choked by ice and we can't get these shipments in, it has a big impact, and you will feel it personally. So we're out there working hard. I think this year we started off our ice season December 16th, which is probably one of the earliest seasons we started doing this. We do have quite a bit of ice already up on the Penobscot River in areas up north. Not a big concern here for folks, but as it starts to get colder, anticipate it being colder, it will start affecting other waterways, and so we'll stay on top of that. Coast Guard Thunder Bay is our 140-foot icebreaker tug. She's in Rockland, but typically this time of year she heads down to support the 1st District, who I work for, keeping the Hudson River open. And she's getting ready to head down there, and we'll return once we get into that spring breakout, when we start getting melting ice and flows blocking the waterways, which is a huge concern, especially up in Bangor, because they can have some pretty severe flooding. So we try to get ahead of that and make sure we keep the waterways open, ice moving out, so we don't get that flooding. Big thing also this time of year is we have a lot of, in fact, I think today was a record breaker. I think we started getting a lot of those serious cases where we get a lot of vessels sinking, commercial vessels primarily, especially in the commercial fishing vessels fleet. I think we have 4 today in a sailing boat that were either impacted by the winds or whatever reason sank. Principal concern for us is not necessarily search and rescue because these, all these vessels were moored up and no one was on board at the time, but it does end up with a release of pollution. So I think total in 1 day period, we had almost a couple hundred gallons across the area of release of diesel in the waterways. We're trying to get out there and get that cleaned up as quickly as we can, working with Maine DEP. So so far, we're on track, keeping up with the events for today. But as we get further in the season, when weather really starts kicking up, we start getting those offshore cases where these fishing vessel fleets get caught in some severe storms, and then we're actually out there and trying to rescue people, especially with cold weather and cold water temperatures. Looking ahead, coming up in the springtime, as we start moving to boating safety or the boating season, we are really pushing hard this coming year to get out and educate the boating public on paddle boat safety. Last year, district-wide, and when I say district, the Admiral Poole is my boss up in Boston. He exercises control over the first Coast Guard district, which extends from New Jersey all the way up to our Canadian border. So he's my boss. I'm his tactical operational commander in the field. And what we're trying to do is trying to educate the folks that even though it may be a nice, beautiful day in June or May, the water temperatures are brutally cold and you probably have about 5 minutes to live. Or at least remain functional in the water where you can do simple things like, zip up your life jacket. Last year we had 16 paddleboard related deaths in the first district. Most of those occurred up in northern New England. And one is obviously too many, but some of these included, and you probably saw the press releases, involved some Maine guides, overcome by weather events they didn't see or didn't expect. We're trying to get ahead of that. We're trying to educate folks. So we're planning on a huge paddleboard safety campaign, probably around May. We're going to do a kickoff of that, and that will be principally led by our auxiliary folks, our volunteer component, but we want to get that word out. So boating safety, paddleboard safety is always a big thing starting off the season. Part of my priority and focus is on mass rescue operations. I'm sure you all know that cruise ship season, when it kicks off, we've seen a big increase in people and big ships coming in. Well, we're starting to get more people, more ships, bigger ships. And my one thing that keeps me up at night is you get something like the Oasis of the Seas coming up here with 5,000 plus people on board. And they're up there in Bar Harbor, Maine, and they have something catastrophic happen, and we know what happens. How do we handle a mass casualty operation on the water, 5,000 plus people in Bar Harbor, Maine? That will be a significant challenge. It will tax your system, it will tax everybody's systems in terms of whether you're first responders or whether you're EMA, whatever. There's no concrete plan that I think solidifies our state response. One of the things that the Coast Guard brings to the table is that as a federal agency, as a federal official, I recognize that no one single agency in the state of Maine or New Hampshire or anywhere in the country has the capability to respond to an incident like that. But as a federal officer, I can reach out very quickly and bring in those resources we need to respond to a situation like that, whether it's a catastrophic oil spill, a tanker leaking 150,000 gallons of number 6 crude. I'm the mechanism that can get these resources to the table and out in the field to start responding to this. But it's a joint effort. It's not just me. It's everybody in the room where that may occur. And as part of the coastal communities, any one of you people could be involved in responding to a cruise ship that flipped over right out here, or a tanker that broke apart in a storm. So we're all in it together, and I value these opportunities to reach out to our local partners. And again, if you would like us to come in and talk to you, we'll have to do so. Great presentation on active shooter. I'd love to invite you up to talk to our folks. The third thing we're going to be looking at this summer is a active shooter in a high passenger vessel like a ferry, and how we respond to that. Believe it or not, Coast Guard is a law enforcement agency, but we don't have a concrete plan or protocols or TTP, techniques, tactics, procedures to respond to an active shooter environment. We tend to rely on you guys because we don't have the folks that have that level of training. But I think we have found, I think law enforcement has found that the most important initial action for law enforcement is to get in there and neutralize that shooter. So we as a law enforcement agency can start looking at developing policies in the 1st Coast Guard District and how we respond to that. And primarily how we're going to support you folks to get, I think State Police as a tactical team, We're working with some folks in your end to try and understand and coordinate how we would deliver your team out to a ferry or a passenger ship that was involved in that kind of situation. So again, appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and
Captain, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Have the sector commander come to Alfred, Maine to give us a presentation. It's very much appreciated, because I know how busy your schedule is.
it is, but it's nice to get away.
Overall questions from anybody? That's it. You're done. Thank you. This is good.
That is nice.